hello to everybody. So it's the second webinar for Invisible Lines. Would like to thank you, Lisa and Central Vapeur, for the organization. So this afternoon, it's 1 hour and 30 minutes about how to build an international project. And then we will have a discussion, a dialogue with Sam Arthur from Nobro. So at the end of each lecture, do not hesitate, of course, to ask any questions. So it's really an open discussion for you. So I will start to introduce myself. So I'm Nicolas Grivel. I am a literary agent. The name of my agency is my name, Nicolas Grivel Agency. And I'm also a scout for animation studio as Laika. So really is not to talk about myself, because really the goal of this webinar is to help you on your projects, to think about how they can be turned into a international direction. It means to try to be signed in various languages, in various territories. But just to give you how I'm working, so I just needed to say my background. So during 7 years, my job as an editor, I was working for an imprint of Hachette named Pika in France. And my job, it was to pick up some licenses from Japan, mostly mainstream manga, shonen, shoujo. These manga were published by Kodansha. It's like the twin of Hachette in Japan. And actually, the Japanese publishers, they are working through agencies like Toan, Total Agency, for example. So it's how I learned my job as a literary agent. What I kept in mind from Japan as a French publisher, so I was looking for licenses from Japan for a publication into French. And actually, the request from the Japanese, of course, it was like in every contract, you need to know the advance, minimum guarantee, and you need to know how much you will have on royalties linked on the retail price for the French market. I will talk about it later on. The duration of the contract. So in this case, in general, it's 5 to 7 years, started from the date of the first publication of the volume. For example, for fairy tale, when it has been released, you add plus 7 years, and that's the duration of the license. But what was very interesting from the Japanese publishers, of course, it was a question of numbers, but also a key point, it was a question of, okay, you just made an offer of this project, you make a financial offer, but what you will do for the promotion, for the marketing part of the project. And this, again, I think is so important. Of course, in every contract, you need to know for what you have signed, for when, how long it will be. But another point, which is in general, not inside the contract, it's what your future publishers will do with your project. So this is so important. And now, in my career as a literary agent, thanks to the Japanese publishers, it's very, very important for me to always think about it. So after my thought, it was easy. It was, okay, we can find manga, so from Japan, everywhere. If you go to Central America, you will be in the forest in Guatemala. and you will meet a teenager with a t-shirt of Naruto. So it was like a soft power. You can see manga everywhere. It's really viral. So the second market after the Japanese market in manga is the French market. It's not the English market. That's why also in comics, hard to name comics, bande dessine, graphic novels, hard to know exactly how to talk about this kind of projects. But the place where you can find the more diversity is not in Japan, is not in North America. It's really on the French speakers country. So between Switzerland, French Canada, Belgium, and France. Every year, from a list of 50, 60 publishers, which are publishing into French, there is around 5,000 new titles every year. So, of course, on the 5,000 titles, there is a lot of translation from Japan, maybe 1,000, but books from North America, books also created by French, Belgium, Swiss authors, and also because the French market sometimes is like a shelter for some Brazilian, Israeli authors. It's time to time they are working directly with the French publishers. So it was my first job. I stayed at Pika 7 years, and then I was thinking to do the same, but from that's a little bit the DNA of Invisible Lines. So it was to think about European projects published by French, German, Italian, Spanish publishers. And my goal, it was, okay, it was to do the same as for the manga, but from Europe, and to pursue the North American or UK publishers. So I started to sell some rights like this one from Ludovic de Burn. And actually this book published in the States by IDW Top Shelf, Chris Taros, the head of Top Shelf, it was the first time he was buying licenses from a foreign country. So also a question from him when we signed the contract, it was, Nicolas, do you know a translator? Because at that time, they didn't have any contacts or translators from French into English, from Italian into English, from German into English, and so on. So that's why also the question to build a project very international, it's also to have contacts about translators. So more and more on covers of titles in North America, if you are reading a review, a magazine named Publisher Weekly, more and more publishers, they will add the names on the cover of the translator. So it's very, very important. So here, it's the list of titles I have sold recently in different territories. I know from Invisible Lines, it's authors from Italy, Czech Republic, Germany, and France. So I think maybe you know Manuele Fior. It's his new title, Celestia. What I like regarding the job as a literary agent, it's I don't have lines. It's invisible lines for sure, because when you are working for a publishing house, you have a collection, you have a line, and you need to find and to pick some projects really for your program. But me, it could be Celestia, it could be also comics for kids, as Ariol by Emmanuel Guibert and Marc Boutavant. Memoir is a trend, and a lot of memoir, graphic memoir, it's easier for this kind of titles to travel and to be translated in different territories. That's the case of a game for swallows from Zena Abirached, a French Lebanese author. So it's to talk about the civil war in 94, but it's the type of books that can be translated. I say memoirs, it's really a trend, but sometimes, you have a question. I see that someone wants to ask a question. Do not hesitate if you have a question, or maybe not. If not, I will continue. I will move forward. So I will continue. So I think what is important in your project is to think about, okay, what you want to tell, but it's not a question, it's not only a book about Lebanon, about the civil war. That's the first layer of the story. It's a night during the civil war in Lebanon, but the second layer of the story is very universal. It's how to stay alive, to try to have a normal life, even the family is surrounded by the civil war. So it's always the same. If you have two layers in general, it's easier to be translated and to be published in different languages. Also, as you know, since a few years, the comics age, you can tell everything. You can make a documentary, you can make a reportage, like Ghzou, who is a journalist. But like this book by Philippe Squarzoni, it's climate change. So it's really a documentary about global warming. So this kind of topics, of course, you can find it everywhere. So my goal, it's always the same. When I'm traveling in different countries, is to find new voices, like Zhuoma from China. So this book came out in English recently, a few months ago. This one, it's a memoir again. It's from Ayat al-Shir. It's 2 years in the Israeli army. This one, it's about Bobby Fischer, just came out in Czech Republic, for example, working with, I like to have a very diverse list of authors for the stories, for the genre, but also for the art, like Giacomo Nani, who has been nominated, who has won a prize in Angoulême 2 years ago. Again, it's nowadays you can find comics artists, cartoonists everywhere. Sonny Liu, I'm working with him, is from Singapore. So this one is a project by Nicolas Grivel, just came out with Delcourt in France. And also working, and I will take the example of Kumsuk Jandri Kim later on. So that's her new book, The Waiting. And here, that's the French version. So sometimes, of course, it depends if the authors, they would agree, but the cover, of course, can be changed. So also from Italy, so Aldo Brando, for example, by GP and Luigi Cretone. Project from China. I spent a lot of my time in China, not anymore since COVID, but also what I want to say, it's there is no language barrier, because, for example, Ni Jun lives in Beijing. The writing, the language for the writing of the projects is into Mandarin. The way to talk with the French publisher Gallimard is in English, and the it has been first, and the original publisher is Gallimard, published into French. So that's why now there is no borders. You need to write your story in the language you feel more comfortable. So you are not, of course, obliged to write your story into English. It doesn't mean that you will be published directly in North America or in UK or in different territories. Again, what is important is to write in the language you feel more comfortable, that you can have all the details you really want to go, and to go really to the limits of the dialogues and so on. So that's why, again, as an author, a translator will be a key person to work with you and to work with your future publisher for the translation. But again, I don't think it's a right choice to write into English if you feel more comfortable in other language. So again, another example about translation, sometimes because of, I think you recognize maybe this image is from Kobane Calling by Zero Calcare from Italy. And during years, Zero Calcare has not been translated, even is of Italian and French, because he has a French passport, Michele. But for the publishers, actually, they were thinking it was too hard to translate because Zero Calcare lives in a neighborhood in Rome. He used a dialect from this part of Italy. And for a bunch of publishers, they said, okay, it's impossible to translate, so we cannot do it. So actually, my job, it was to convince publishers, Cambourakis, for example, for this case. And Cambourakis, I think they have found the right translator for Zero Calcare. So it's exactly positioned as an author, Brune Seban, who is the translator of Zero Calcare into French. So this again is very important to think about international project. Your presentation of your project has to be in general into English, but again, you can write the dialogues and your story in different languages. It's really up to you. But what is important is that the work and the job, and it depends, if you have contacts as well, it's always better, but to have the right translator for the project. So working with people from everywhere, for example, this project is from Australia. This one again is from Zuoma from mainland China. And this one, it's by Alexander Utkin, a Russian artist. The project, I found this project during a convention, a comics convention in Moscow. And actually this project, it was Alexander. He has no contacts. In Russia, there is only few comics publisher like Bookniga, a great comics publisher. But there is no possibilities, no opportunities to develop his project. So I say, okay, we could try to have a European publisher, and we will have a discussion with Sam later on. So Sam is the publisher, the original publisher of this project, written into Russian, published by a UK publisher, Nobro, and it came out into Spanish, French with Gallimard and other languages. And finally, it has been translated, published in Russia. So sometimes it takes time. So also my background, it's I was scouting properties, so an artist. for the Portland-based animation studio Laika. So my job, it was to make a weekly report to find 2D animators, concept artists, stop motion animators, and so on. So I visited a bunch of schools in different territories, in Budapest, in France, of course, in Central America, in Asia, not everywhere, but in different territories. So again, what I always try to keep in mind from my experiences as a scout, it's really for the portfolio. Your portfolio, just a little tip, it's not an archive. So you need, it's like a garden, so you need to make a strong selection of what you want to show, because in maybe a selection of 10 illustration, it depends about the clients, of course, but me, the way and the time I have spent on portfolio, it was a lot, so I was fast, and on 10 images, if I feel that 3 or 4 illustrations are less appealing, so me, I was like, okay, where is the level of the authors? So that's why make a selection. Sometimes you can delay it, and it's better. It's better to make again a strong selection of the project. So my job, yeah, it was to find authors like this one, Clément d'Artigue, who has worked after for Laika. So here it was a portfolio review in Poland, and also part of my job for Laika, it was to find books, comics, graphic novels, or original concepts that could fit to be adapted as an animation film to Laika. And every time on the weekly report, to persuade my boss, it was to sum up a project in 5 sentences, not more. So that's why I use it. I will tell you after of how to present a project. So to be international sometimes, and that's a part, it's to travel. It's always, even a lot of convention move and turn into visio and webinars. So, but there is important festivals, of course, Angoulême, Bologna, Frankfurt. For the Spanish speakers, it's more and more Guadalajara in Mexico. So it seems to be a great convention. And also to think about what will be the futures, and the futures sometimes with comics is webtoons. And for example, it's I went to South Korea for a convention. It was very interesting to see what kind of projects they are looking for. So again, it's yeah, it was just an overview, a quick overview about what I'm doing. Let's check if there is a bunch of questions. Oh yeah, so Natalie, yeah, I will do it at the end. I have a question. You said there was considered too difficult to translate due to the extensive use of Roman dialects. Was there a similar problem for Aldobrando that is written in the medieval languages? Okay. Well, if I may, I will. Do you want me to answer to the question now, or you prefer to have the answer at the end? Up to you. So, a quick. Okay, I can answer for Aldobrando. Aldobrando, at the beginning, it was a card game named Broti. And I think GP doesn't want to draw this project. So that's why with Luigi Critone, who is the artist. He lives in France. So it was the idea, it was to have a project very international. So to have it in different languages. So that's the case because I think Aldo Brando, we have signed around 7, 8 languages. So to talk about your question, the first publisher, even they only have the French rights, it's Casterman. So the project has been written into Italian. If you check on the copyright page, it's always the same translator for GP, Hélène, and Hélène has done the translation for Aldo Brando. And what was helpful, and you're right, because of the terms from the Middle Age, from GP with a good French speaker, and also Luigi Critone, sorry, who is totally bilingual. It was easier for the translator, Hélène, who already has a high level, and a high level also that GP, he trusts her translation really. So that's why, again, you're right, it was a translation from Italian with a medieval from the Middle Age background. So there is 2 layers of difficulties, but thanks to that GP and Luigi, they are speaking French, it was helpful. So that was very, very important for this project. And then, and only then, Coconino in Italy released Aldo Brando from the text of GP. So it was, you know, sometimes it could be surprising, but the original and first publisher of Aldo Brando is not Coconino, it's Casterman. Even Casterman, they only have the French rights, but I will explain later on. So I hope I answered to the question. So I'm going back. So I'm going back to the presentation. So yeah, I think what is very important for you as an author, it's okay. You have maybe different projects that you really want to develop. So it's important to make a selection of which project you want to do. You need to take time. You need to, it's not the goal again of this webinar is not to say that you need to work with a literary agent. It's not this. It's more with or without, you need to have someone as a sparring partner who will be able, before the editor, to let you know if it's a good idea or not. So I guess you have a sketch book with maybe, take an example with Kumsuk Jandri Kim. She has a sketchbook in which she will write what kind of project, what kind of stories she wants to develop. And I think it's very important to have it. Maybe to say, okay, if it's a documentary, I need maybe to meet this journalist. If it's a memoir, I need to meet this person. So I think this is so important. Sometimes you need to have a timeline, a hierarchy about which projects you think it's possible to develop or not. And it's a key point. Before to think about the presentation, if you have different projects in mind, you need to be your own filter about what you want to tell and what you want to develop. Plus, me, I'm more on my way that it's if I want to tell you something that you control everything from scratch, from the beginning to the end from your project, it's really what I want. And to try, please, to avoid toxic contract, toxic clients, and so on. But that has been said. What you need to do, it's you have a list, you hesitate between 2 or 3 projects, what you want to develop. You need to think that what is the job of an editor? They need to finance your project. That's why I would recommend you to make a presentation on during the creative process at the beginning to find advances from the publishers. If you prefer to develop your own projects till the end, and when it will be finished, to bring and to pitch this project to the publisher, it's up to you again. But I think it's very risky, and the goal and the job of a publisher, or not the goal, the job, is to finance your project and your creative process. So that's why, very important, if you have 2, 3, 4, 5 ideas of books, yeah, that you want to do, make a selection. Take time. Choose the right person that they will help you. So if you work in a studio, maybe it will be people who are at the same studios than you, and they will say, okay, if you want to develop this story, I don't think it will be good. So people that you trust the advices and that you think it could be good to listen to them. So you need time for this. And then, in my mind, you need to make a presentation. You need to think about, okay, how this project could be summarized in a good way for the publishers. So I will show you some examples of projects from my list. There is no rules, but I think it's like in cuisine, in kitchen, there is some ingredients, and you need every time to have it. And you don't forget something, that when you will bring your own project, actually, the editors in front of you, that they will receive the PDF. In general, you have to send the project in a PDF form. They know nothing about your project. So you always have to have it in mind that they have no ideas about what you want to tell. So that's why I will take this example. So I will share a presentation. So just need to do this. So I will start with this project. So I hope you can see. So a presentation of a project, for me, he has to be in a one PDF. Because, for the example, on the French market, the French publishers, they are publishing 5,000 new titles every year. But how many titles they receive as a proposal from authors, I don't know. But I think a lot and a lot. So you need to catch them directly. It has to be simple, and you need to show how it could be for the story, but also for the object as a book. So that's why it's easy to say you have to start with a proposal of a cover. So for example, this project by Marino Neri from Italy. So it's a proposal of a cover. Maybe it won't be the final cover. That's the case, maybe. But really, it's like the editors, they will open the PDF, they will start to see the cover. It's like they are going on a bookstore and they will check what is the new titles on the table of the bookstore. It's exactly like this. So you think about a proposal, an illustration, which will sum up what we will see inside the book. The title, it could be a working title, La Tempête, so for this case. And then, so that's the first image that the editors will have. So I think it's very, very important. Then on the second page of your PDF, you try to sum up in 3 or 5 sentences what will be the story, what is the story about, or if it's a science fiction, maybe to sum up in 5 sentences your concept, why not? Then at the bottom, you have some technical information about, okay, in how many pages it will be. So this is important for the publishers to know it, because it will change the price, but also it's important for you, because after, for you as an author, you will know when it could be done. So, and sometimes it's to think about compromises, because if you think about, if you have a question, do not hesitate to ask. So you can ask her the question. Yeah, I'm trying, but so if you want, you can, because it seems with the micro it doesn't work. But if you want to ask me question via the chat, you can. If it's
Nicolas, I think you can click on the people who raise their hands.
Yeah, I was trying to, but the point it doesn't seem to work. Yeah, I think it's okay. So again, if you have any questions, it could be on the chat, or if you want to ask me directly the question. So I return to the presentation. So what is important for a presentation is like to check if you have everything before to start the project. So if you hesitate about, okay, it could be in 200 pages, yeah, maybe it will be very long to do, and sometimes it's okay. Maybe I should make some compromises, and it will be less long. So that's why it's important to add and to say when the project could be done. For example, November 2021 for this project, and to have in which language it will be written, so into Italian for Marino. So then you have to show a synopsis. Synopsis is like the skeleton of your story. Yeah, maybe some people, some artists, they will ask me, but don't you think that we have to send the V1 or the complete script or scenario to the publishers, and thanks to it, they can have an overview about everything about the story? I would answer no, because I was an editor, and sometimes the editors are a little bit lazy. So it's better to convince them step by step. Unfortunately, even the scenario and the script would be beautiful in 40 pages. unfortunately, nobody will start to read a 40 pages scenario. It's too long. So that's why if you think about Laika, every time they say, okay, Nicolas, you have projects, but start to sum up it in 5 sentences, not more. We don't need more. So it's different in the publishing industry, but in 1, 2, or 3 pages, if you take time to do the right text for the synopsis, it's perfect because it will give the architecture to the editors about what you want to tell. And for you, it will be very important because it will be like exactly what you want to develop. And that's why, thanks to a sharp and a synopsis, you know better in how many pages you want to develop. So again, you start with a cover. It's like you discover, the editors will open the PDF and they discover your project. It's like to see a book on a table in a bookstore with a working title. The cover and the titles, maybe they will change during the creative process, maybe not. Directly, you sum up in 5 sentences, you add some technical information, synopsis in 1, 2, 3 pages, and now the publisher, they want to see how it will be translated into sequences. So, and you need to choose, you need to pick the right sample. So the right sample, it doesn't mean that you have to draw from page 1 to page 10. It could be like in your project from page 5 to page 12. It really depends. It's you need to choose the sample with more impacts. So if it's a science fiction, maybe it will be good to draw where you can see the science fiction twist, maybe. So that's why for this project, it was not exactly the first pages of the project. What is important for the layout, he has to be close of the final results you want. That's why it's good to precise to give in which format, in which size you would like to see your project printed. So also it's not details, but for the lettering, yeah, you have to be careful to choose, if not your handwriting, but to choose the right font, which is readable for the editors and will be at the level of your drawings. So with this kind of sample, so in general, 5, 10, 15 pages, not more, because again, the job of an editor is to finance your projects. So you don't have to do more. But as what I said for the portfolio, he has to be, you have to check that everything, all the pages you want to show are at the same line, at the same level. And if you feel, and in general, it's like in a portfolio, if you feel that some pages are not at this level, a little bit less good regarding about what you have done, it's better to rethink or to avoid to show these pages. So this is very important because it's, of course, this is when you start, when you are doing books, is when it's your second, third, fourth, fifth book, publishers, they know what is your art, or if you are Blutch, it's like David Bowie, so they don't know because you change your art every 2 albums. So that, but that's another story. But the point it's for this kind of presentation, the quality and how you want to develop for the art has to be equal in all the pages you want to show to the publishers. Then it's always a question of time, but you don't have, I think it's good to show another sample, but not finished pages. It's better to show as a storyboard a stage. If you do it, you can take another sample. It has to be clear for the sequences, sorry, and also for the dialogues. And thanks to it, the editors, they will have another sample, so they will know better how it will be for the characters, and so on. And then for the characters, it's like in animation for the Bibles. Yeah, you can add some info. And then, yeah, you add information about you and also why you want to make this project now. And I think you are ready to bring to the publishers your project. So I will show you another presentation. Alors, I have a question. When you send a proposal to an editor, is it better to already have someone representing the right, like in this case? Well, it depends. It depends about your contacts. It depends about if you think it's good to be represented by someone, by an agent. It's Marino. It's the second project we are doing together. The first project, it was a little bit different because the first project by Marino I was taking care of, it was already finished. So for me, I was a little bit not frustrating, but I explained to Marino, if we would continue to work together, I would prefer to think at the beginning with him about which project he wants to develop. Exactly what I have explained before. Okay, discussion about, okay, I want to tell this story, maybe this one. What do you think, Nicolas? It's what I prefer in general. It's not to choose, it's to advise. And then it's different because from the beginning, from the idea, it was okay to think with Marino. Marino is also teaching in different schools of art in Italy. So when I said to Marino, okay, we should do this type of presentation, he said, okay, we will do it. And thanks to it, I think it's more powerful. So it's more the way to do. It's not a question to be represented or not, actually. So I hope it answered to your question, because again, it could be with or without a literary agent. It really depends about how you feel, how many contacts you have. It really depends. I don't have the answer, the complete answer for it. Let me know if you want to ask me if it's okay for the answer. If not, you can ask me again this question. So, and I will take another example. So it was this one. So again, me, what I prefer in my job is to find new voices. And new voices, that's not exactly the case of Marino. Marino, he has been published many times by Atrabile, by Ici Même in Italy, etc. But for example, with Empacho, I'm going every 2 years in Central America. It's for a competition for new talents. And what I like, again, is to find new authors. And sometimes that's why more and more in comics, graphic novels, you can tell whatever you want. Today is the last day of the rest of your life by Uli Lust. Uli needed to add maybe more than 15 years, maybe 20 years between the facts, what she has seen in Italy, and the book. So, and actually, because autobio is sometimes so sensitive, so sometimes, yeah, you need to protect yourself. It's so hard. But sometimes it's an emergency, so it's like a cathartic. You need to push it away. And that was a bit the case of this project about abortion in Central America. It's forbidden because it's very Catholic countries in Costa Rica. And actually, it was also, but me or the author, Chabela, was to be patient because it was so sensitive to talk about this topic, because again, it's a little bit risky for her to tell it. She can go to jail because again, it's totally forbidden to do it in Costa Rica and all over Central America, almost. So that's why it was, and the way it was, okay, there is no possibilities to be published because there is no comics or graphic novels publishers in Central America, only a few magazines. So it was Chabela, okay, it won't be directly for publishers in Latin America, but in Europe or in North America, I'm pretty sure if you want and if you think you can tell your story, you can be published by someone, but not in Central America. That's why it's very international. And sometimes you think you are maybe in a country and you think, okay, there is no exactly the publisher I need for my project. Yeah, think about what could be possible in Europe, in North America. So it's the way to do and the way to think. That's why, again, is what I prefer. And the second point from Chabela, it was, okay, my English is so. I was saying it's not important. You will write your story into Spanish, and we will find a publisher, and he will be in charge to find the right translator to be so close about what you want to tell for the dialogues and so on. So again, the way to present, of course, it's at the beginning, she had multiple projects that she wanted to develop, but it could be with a short, some people that you are very close, not only with a literary agent. And I was like, okay, this project, I think, and when she started to say, okay, I had this in my life, but I don't know if I can tell it in a comics form. It was, okay, take time. I think it could be powerful. I think it could help you as a person, but take time to think about it. And then, again, you think about a draft proposal for the cover, and Pacho, maybe it will be a different title, maybe it will be a different cover, but it's a good image that you send directly to the publishers. The same introduction, because it's autobio, so it's so linked with her, so it's a part of a bio, a number of pages, when it could be done, the format, synopsis, again, for this part, it's in English. You see, there is no rules. It could be a synopsis of 1, 2, 3 pages. It could be, but yeah, not more. main characters. So thanks to it, the publisher, they will enter, they will know what kind of stories you want to tell. And then, yeah, some samples that to show how it will be for the tone, for the story, for the dialogues in Spanish for this case, but if I have time, I will show you there is a second version with the dialogues into English. And for the art, it's a new voice, so nobody knew what she has done in the past because she's just fresh out, graduated from a school of art, Veritas in Costa Rica. But what is very interesting, it's, you can recognize her art. And it's very, equal. You can see it in every page. So, and thanks to this presentation, maybe or maybe not, Sam Arthur from Nebro has signed this contract. So a publisher in UK, a story from Central America, a story written into Spanish, and Sam will do it for UK, but also in North America, and for the States, maybe it will be a bilingual two versions, one in English and one in Spanish. I've seen that okay, so I have, maybe you can ask this later. I don't want to switch subject, but could let us know how to look for literary agents. Yeah, of course. I think the figure very important, not very known. Also, how to reach out to a literary agent, which with a project or portfolio. Okay, so I will try to answer, but I will try to stay neutral. I don't want to make an advertising for my literary agency. It doesn't make any sense to me. So in comics, actually, in graphic novels, there is only few literary agencies. The biggest one is in the world is Wiley. The nickname of the Wiley is Jackal. So it's because everybody knows how to negotiate, how he will negotiate with the publishers. So they're really talking about clients. In comics, Wiley agencies, they have Chris Ware, Charles Burns, Ben Catcher, Alison Bechdel, Asaf Anuka. Asaf, he has a project with Roberto Saviano. I think some participants are from Italy, and you have seen that Asaf Anuka, who is also animator, he has worked in Walls with Bashir. He just released a book with Roberto Saviano, published by Bao Publishing in Italy. It will come out in France in January. So that's the biggest literary agency, but it's really, they are not looking for new authors, comics authors. They are looking for success, and then they ask if the people they want to be a client. So that's the way. Otherwise, if you are from Italy or different territories, you have Alexandra Steinfeld, EM Books. So you need to check. She has a very prestigious list of authors, Simon and Selman, for example, who has different artists. But it's not to criticize. Me, I'm not doing the same job because Alexandra, it depends about what you are looking for. Alexandra she's great to sell rights of projects already published, already done, or to sell when they are in the process. I don't think she's an editor. And me, it's bad. I'm comparing. No, it's just not to compare, but for example, other literary agencies, they are more a first editor, so to think about what kind of stories the authors they want to tell, to develop at the beginning some project, to make the presentation on the early stage, and then to sell the rights. But like into animation or to the movies, to say, okay, how much you need to make it happen? It could be 12, 20, 25, 30,000 euros. And this, unfortunately, cannot be written on the presentation. That's the big differences with animation and movies. Because when I was at Laika, we had a budget. I mean, we knew how much it will cost to make it happen for the project. And in the publishing industry, even in North America, it's a little bit taboo. It's impossible to, unfortunately, to write, okay, for this graphic novel, I need to get 20,000 US dollars. It's impossible to write it. But you need to keep in mind how much you need to make it happen. If you don't reach this number, and there is a huge gap regarding your expectation and what you have as an offer, in my mind, and for the projects I'm following, unfortunately, sometimes it happens. It's better to say, okay, we stop the project. It's too risky. Because if you needed 20,000 euros to make it happen, and you have a proposal for the advance for 8, the gap of 12 is too big. So even sometimes you can match with a grant, with the help from, it depends about your citizenship, it depends about where you live, but you can combine the two and other way to finance the project. But if it's too tricky at the beginning, better to say, okay, it's no, and sometimes, okay, it's hard, you will be maybe disappointed, but it's better to say, okay, I stop. So the second, of course, a literary agent is the same as a publisher. So you need to convince them. So it doesn't mean, I don't know, Casterman every week, Vincent Petit in Casterman, maybe he will receive maybe 10, 20 proposals for a project. Me, recently, I'm working with a British artist, Daryl Cunningham, and actually his new project, I have sent it to Abrams in North America, to Charlie Kochman, the head of Abrams. Okay, Nicolas, I love Daryl works, but you are my 22nd proposal of the week. So it's a tough week. So it's the same for the literary agencies. It means that you need, before to reach different agency, it could be Alexandra, it could be me or someone else, Ivanka, for example, I can send you a list of names. You need to think about a strategy, in parentheses, to pursue them. It's really the same. Talking about a project or a portfolio, it really depends, because me, for example, I'm looking for both. What I prefer is to build what I said, to build a project from, not from scratch, but with authors. But also, time to time, I'm working with, I show you Bobby Fischer. It's a script writer based in New York, Julian Vologe. He has a lot of scripts, and we are looking for artists, and artists not for a commission. It's really a dialogue between the scriptwriter and the artist. So, and it will be the same if you would have to send your portfolio to the literary agency. You need to be a filter about your own work. So to make a right selection, and it's how it is. So I guess on the question, maybe you want to know, I think it's important to be transparent, but the commission from a literary agency, it starts from 10% as a commission to 20%. Me, for example, in the middle, it's 15%, 1.5. So that's why question about a literary agency, it depends about what is your need, but I hope I answer. And me, for example, and I hope it's the case of the other literary agency, I'm not the agent of Marino Neri, for example. I'm the agent of La Tempête by Marino Neri, this project. So it's totally different. So I will go back with another presentation. I think I have maybe time. Just try to open this. Okay, so so this, for example, it's the new project by Kumsuk Jondri Kim. She's based in South Korea, and actually her new project, the presentation is the same, but it exists in 3 languages, into Korean, into French, and into English. The same, the cover with the title, what we will find, it's in Korean, but we can recognize the synopsis. It's divided per chapters. The Bible of the characters, the same. And then, yeah, a sample with the lettering. And thanks to HIT, this project, it will be presented in South Korea, in Europe, in North America, in Italy, in Germany at the same time, because it's the same presentation, but in different languages. And some information, a long list of awards from Kumsuk. And actually, again, this project, it's presentation written into French, Korean, English, but the language for it's written into Korean. So that's why you control everything. So you need to choose which project you want to develop. Well, if you don't have an idea of a story, yeah, prepare your portfolio and you will contact an author you really like, and you will try to convince the author to work with you on a story. And what I like nowadays in comics, there is no borders. So it could be someone from the movie industry, it could be a novelist, it's a journalist. So it depends about what kind of project you want to be in. So that's why no limits on it. And then you choose the right project. It could be, again, without a literary agency. So you can do it by yourself. I should not say that, but I think it's possible. But more seriously, actually, what you need to do is a strong presentation. It's very important. So you need to spend time on it. Of course, it's time, but it's worth it. You need really to think about how it will be the reaction of publishers. They don't have any ideas about what you want to develop. So this is very important. Again, he has to be in a one PDF, not a confetti of JPEG. Otherwise, it's impossible when an editor will download the different files, it will be totally a mess. So that's why you need to make it in a one PDF with the name of the PDF of the project and the name, your name, or your artist name. It's as you prefer. Then it's finished. This presentation is ready. So what you have to do? If I would have to sum up my job, it's just to bring the right project to the right person. You can do the same. When the presentation is ready, it's just to send to the publishers that you feel close or you think it will be good to be published by them. This, it's regarding, it depends because there is so multiple cases. It's maybe to like a line of a publishing house. Sometimes it's maybe if you like Simon and Selman, if you like Timothée Le Boucher, if you like, I don't know, Bastien Vives or someone else, or Sacha Omer or other artists, maybe you think you want to be published by the same publishing house. So that could be like this. Otherwise, I would recommend you to go often to bookstores and to see which books you like. So it could be Canicula, it could be Salamandra in Spain, it could be Argo, it could be Reproduct, it could be Fahrenheit in Denmark, it could be Nobro, it could be Abrams, it could be Fantagraphics, Drone Quarterly, and so on. So you don't need to have all the contacts, but you need to have few contacts at least. So when your presentation will be ready, you will send to all the contacts you have, and there is no borders. You can send it, I don't know, it depends about where you live, but it could be directly to the German publisher, to the French publisher, and so on. And when you will receive the first offer, in general, you need to wait if everything is in conditional, but if you have picked the right project, you have done a solid sheet presentation, and you have a strong list of contacts of someone that you think it could fit, the project could fit with them, it's perfect. So in general, after 2 weeks, 3 weeks, you will have first feedbacks of editors. And then that's why, again, it's you control everything. And then when you will receive the first offer, you need to ask details on this offer. So you need to know what will be for the advance, what is the number for the royalties, if there is some escalators on royalties, if the royalties are linked with the retail price or not. Unfortunately, in UK or in North America, it's more linked on the net receipts. That's another story, but if you want, I can develop after about it. The duration, how long it will be for the contract, which territories are included, which language, if the digital rights are inside or not, what even is approximative numbers, but how, what will be the first print run. And thanks to it, you will have enough info to analyze if it's a good or bad offer. when you have the first offer, you need, in parentheses, you need to freeze the time. So you have time. Again, you control everything. It's your project. It's not a commission from a publisher. So how to negotiate? It's you need to start a competition between the publisher who were interested in the project. So when you have the first offer, you will write to the different publishers interested and the one who sent you the first offer, and you will explain that they will have 2 weeks, not 1 week, it's not enough, not 1 month, it's too long, but 2 weeks, and you will choose, I don't know, it will end on Monday or Friday, in which hour, and the publishers, they have 2 weeks to send to you their best offer. The best offer for the numbers, for the financial part, but also as what the Japanese publishers, they asked me in the past, a promotion, marketing plans about what they will do, what the publishers, they will do with your project. And it's really the way to negotiate and sometimes to say, okay, I don't want to give you this rights because there is someone else who offer something but is different, is not included. And the way you will see a fear of the publishers is to miss a good project. So that's why maybe at the beginning, the advance for the offer, it will be, I don't know, 6,000 euros. But if you do it like a competition between different publishers, and this could be very international, not only the country you are, you will see that the advance will be increased, improved again and again by the publisher, because again, they have the fear to lose the project. So it happens sometimes you start at 6 and you will finish at 25, 30,000 euros. So this is possible to make it. I think it's better to make it like, but you need to be transparent. You need to be prepared. It could be really, you need to lock 2 weeks on your time to take care of it. I know it's time, but otherwise, if you would on a first offer of 6,000, I make this example, but and you wanted to have 12, it will be in this case almost impossible to have 12 because the gap is so high that it's very hard to negotiate on it. So that's why what is important is to make this kind of competition, to ask all the details of the offer and not only one numbers for the advance. And if you would receive all the details for the contract, it will be easier because you will have all the info and you know exactly what you want and what you are ready to sign for. So if you only have few information for the offer, it's how it will be complicated for the contract because you will receive a contract and sometimes the publishers are, okay, we will send you by snail mail the contract and you just have to sign. Of course, it's not possible to do like this. Everybody has to send a V1 for your remarks. But of course, it's not possible to avoid a toxic contract every time. But if you have all and the more details you can get, it will be much easier for you to see how it will be for the contracts. So it's really like this to think about the strategy. And I check the hour. I think we only have a few minutes, and if you have questions, I just finishing because I wanted it's a it's a project, but sometimes the publishers they think that you are on their catalog forever. No, you can decide if you want to choose to change. Sorry, and for a third project, yeah, you can try to have a different publishing house, and every time you need to renegotiate your rights. So I just, in the few minutes, if you have, in the last minutes, if you have question, I want a scholarship for finishing my book project. Yeah, of course, should I mention this is the potential in my proposal? Actually, yes, you can do it, but it doesn't have to be an argument to convince the publishing house, because sometimes some publishers they will say, okay, you got a grant, so maybe the proposal if you Lisa, if you can switch off the micro. And thank you. And it doesn't have to replace the advance. So that's why I think it's good to mention it. But again, it's a plus for you. So it doesn't have to replace this. So I hope it helps. So we have a few minutes more if you have other questions, but really I try to, actually 1 hour and 30 minutes, it's short, but it was really to give you an overview. Okay, take time to think about which project you want to develop. You control everything. Take time for the presentation. It's so important. And also, I forgot to talk about it, but a presentation is for an editor. But then when you will be signed, this presentation on the early stage, if it's a medium-sized company, if it's a Casterman, Gallimard, I don't know, Glénat, Rue de Sèvres, or other companies, your presentation will travel from department to other departments. So it's very important because thanks to it, at the beginning, PR person, marketing department, they will have the info about the project. So now it's very, very important. It's to think about how we never know if a book could be a success or not, but it starts really at the beginning, months before the release of your book. I say but I should maybe ask the question. Do you think that the letting bid publisher for a book is also possible for unpublished cartoonists? Yes, of course. Yeah. Yes, that's also a way to be under the radars of the publishing companies. So, yeah, I think it's no matter about the background, what is important is to have a strong project. So if you have something very unique, could be a memoir, it could be a concept in science fiction, it depends about what you want to tell, it depends about the art, but yes, it's always better because again, you control everything. So it means you have your project, but the value in parentheses, it doesn't have to be fixed only by one publisher. You need to check with other publishing houses if it could be better for the advances, for the promotion, for the royalties. For the royalties, do not forget to ask escalators. It means if you start 10% on the retail price, when the book will sell 10,000 copies, maybe you can ask 11 or 12%. So really escalator step by step. So this is very important. It will change a lot if you have a long seller. So you said that. Oh yeah, we are okay. So very Laure. I think I know Laure. Laure, yes, hi Laure, how are you? You said that the remuneration does not depend on the retail price in the UK and the States, right? So how is it determined? Laure, if we have 2 more hours, I can tell you, but I will try to sum up. It's a very good question. So the point in France, for example, on the French market, I will try to be short. We have a law named Loi Lang. It means in every retailers, so from booksellers, from Amazon, from a supermarket, you cannot, I mean, a retailer, a bookseller, but another shop, sorry, they cannot make a discount of more than 5% on the retail price. It's a key law from the past. It's how some bookstores and how the microcosm of the publishing industry is surviving with a lot of bad points, you know it. But the point in UK or in North America is different. It's the law that the customers, the clients, they can choose the right price. That's really the way to think in North America. That's why it's impossible. It's not impossible. It's possible, but it will be more 6% on the retail price. That's why some publishers in North America or in UK, it's too risky for them to link the retail price with the royalties, because if you go on Amazon.com, you go to the book by Kumsuk Jandri Kim I was talking about before. It's $25, and nowadays you can find it for 15. So, and this because in North America and UK, it's countries of you can choose the price. There is no rules on it, so it's totally, unfortunately, impossible to link on the retail price. So they name it the net receipts. That's why if authors, you have sometimes a proposal from this kind of country and you have 12, 15, maybe 16, you will say, yeah, it's great, but think and ask, it's linked on what? Retail price or on the net receipt? If it's on the net receipt, you can divide per 2, because if you get 12 on the net, it means you have 5 or 6 on the retail price. It's what agents would try to make a calculation like this. So that's why it's different. So I hope, Laure, I answered to your good question. Julia, is it better to keep foreign rights to yourself? Yeah, it's not black and white. It's not a black and white. It depends about your contacts. It depends about contacts. It depends in which stage you have sent your project. Yeah, it's tricky to answer, because again, I don't want to be black and white on it. So sometimes it's good, but I would say, I don't know, for example, with some Italian artists, every time they like to keep the Italian right. That at least it's what you have to do. But if you have contacts, if you have been published in Germany or in Spain, yeah, you can keep. ask to keep this right. Otherwise, I don't know if you know, if you would sell all the world rights to someone, to a publisher, it could be a French publisher or a British publisher, it's 50-50%. So it means, for example, if you have Salamandra in Spain, they will make an offer for your project of 3,000-4,000 euros as an advance. It means that your publisher, original publisher, will get 2 and you 2. So, but what is important is to be paid right away, but that's another story. So I won't have so much time to dig it. Sorry, I didn't see the end of your answer, but that's sometimes the case. If it's not a question to be a small press or alternative press, it's always the same. If you think they don't have someone, they are not represented by someone for the foreign rights at the beginning, before to sign the contract, you should ask to, okay, if you will make an offer for the foreign rights, what you will do? Who is in charge of this rights? Are you going to Angoulême? Are you going to Bologna Book Fair, to Frankfurt, this very funny city? So it's how to do. I hope I answered. Tony, how could an author who wants to publish online content for US readers find a specialized translator? It depends. The best. There is a website, World Without Borders. They are based in Chicago, and every year they have an issue about a magazine. It's an online magazine. They have an issue about comics around the world, and you can find, it's like a portfolio of translators, and you can find the best translators. If in Italy, Jamie Richards, that's the one we just have done. She has translated Celestia by Manuel Fior, released by Fantagraphics. In French, it's Edouard Gauvin. It's it's hard to say, but the best translator. Why I say the best? Because everybody says that when they are reading books translated by Edouard, they don't know it is a translation. Anjali Singh, it was the same. Persepolis by Marjane Satrapi, translated in more than 15 languages, originally published by l'Association. The English version, North American readers, they don't know it's a translation. They cannot feel it. So yes, it would be good for you to be in touch with some translators. And again, I don't say that translators are doing the same job as me. No, it's different, or as an editor. But they always looking, me is not a competition. I mean, I like and I need to be close to some translators, and I will finish with it. It's because they help me, because it's another way to present, it's another way to tell a story. So that's why if you would find a translator for your project for online publication, it will be more than a translator. I think everybody seems to be connected, so we will start the second part of the webinar. So I'm very glad to have with you Sam Arthur. Hello, Sam. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Nice to see you all.
And so the topic of this discussion is how to build an international project for the authors. It's mainly for the audience, artists from Italy, from Germany, from France, from Czech Republic. So you will focus about it later on. But before, maybe, of course, I think all the participants, they know your catalog, your online, but could you please tell us about you, how, why you started and to work into the publishing industry? How did you start it?
So it's a good question. It's kind of a long answer. I will keep it as brief and interesting as possible. So prior to working on No Brow, I was more involved in, well, I was a director of short films, commercials, music videos, and I did that for about 10 years. So I always see my kind of role as a storyteller, and I tell stories with pictures primarily. So when Alex Spiro and I decided to set up No Brow, we talked for a couple of years actually, and we'd worked together on other projects previously, although they were moving image animation projects, this kind of thing. But we, at the time, this is 2008, so when we actually started No Brow, it's kind of, I mean, social media wasn't really a thing then, not really. It was in its infancy. So there was the kind of publishing landscape was also different. The landscape as an illustrator was also very different. There were much less kind of ways to promote yourself as an illustrator then. Also, though, everyone was talking about the way that digital was going to perhaps signify the end of the printed book and the printed word, the printed image. And to Alex and I, this was quite a depressing thought. You know, the idea that print is dead was something that we really wanted No Brow to be at the forefront of making sure that never happened. So for us, the book as an object was sacrosanct. You know, it was the central kind of motivation for us was that you know, people's work could exist in a physical format and be a beautiful object as well. So when we set about our publishing, it was all about making beautiful books and making visual books. In mainland Europe particularly, but actually all over mainland Europe, the picture book is perhaps not as perhaps derided as it is in the UK. In the UK, the culture is a very literary culture we have, right? And we have hundreds of years of proof for that. We also have some of the best-selling authors in the world, in history. We also have some of the biggest publishers originate from the UK as well. So, but primarily it's a kind of literary thing. So for us at No Brow to approach publishing from a visual perspective was quite a fresh thing in the UK. I'm not saying we're the only people to ever do it or the only people to think of doing a picture book, but to approach it in the way that we were, it made us look quite different to most of the other publishers that were out there. And also, I think it made us quite interesting to our European cousins who are probably realizing that there were publishers in the UK that were just catching up with them. So, you know, we saw French, particularly publishers, as being our kind of inspiration. And I would love for the UK to have the same cultural approach to comics and bande dessinée as the French and Belgian. And actually, so do the Dutch and the German and Italian and the Spanish. Everyone is, and the list goes on. But actually, most nations in Europe have a kind of slightly more respected approach to visual publishing than perhaps we have in the UK. So that's kind of where it came from. And I think Nobrow made a splash quite in the way that it did, because we were just providing perhaps something that wasn't already there, and rejuvenating something that needed a bit of rejuvenating, and giving a platform to illustrators that perhaps in a different way, and just approaching comics as well in a slightly different way. You know, it's not like the UK doesn't have famous comics and cartoonists, but in many ways there's a sort of brain drain to the US, and the style of publishing is almost dictated by the US rather than, you know, by us. So I all I think is that we were just reclaiming some of that territory. And yeah, that's a very long-winded answer, sorry, but that's kind of how we started.
Oh, it's perfect. And as you said, the landscape was totally different, but now it's really different. So in UK, you are really also into the North American market. I have 2 questions. When you started, do you have some examples that you really think that it was good to follow? I don't know, Cornelius, l'association in France, or Reproduct in Germany. Do you have some inspiration also from North America? I don't know, maybe Fantagraphics, maybe
Jordan
some
Quarterly,
part of
Fantagraphics,
yeah.
Sure, yeah. All of the people that you've just mentioned were definitely at the forefront of our, you know, they're the books on our shelves, you know, those are the publishers that we were looking at. So absolutely, yeah. Yeah.
You have been graduated from Central St. Martin's in design, but nowadays in a School of Fine Art or this type of schools, there is a department for comics artists or cartoonists, or not exactly in UK, I mean?
Maybe 1 or 2 courses in the UK, 1 or 2, possibly more likely to be postgraduate courses. So it's not really it's not really a course that you can study unless it's an MA course, and there's 1 or 2 courses in the country. What I would say is that there are more illustration courses than ever. So anyone interested in kind of, you know, the graphic novel medium, that there is an outlet via those courses, but they're not necessarily specialist courses. So and obviously there are plenty of publishing MAs and, you know, other kind of postgraduate courses that kind of help get you into publishing. Yeah.
And could you tell us why at the beginning you started to make mostly magazines, zines, limited edition, because you wanted to improve or to increase the audience in UK, and also maybe to talk your experience when you started also to work directly with the French market and what you kept in mind about it?
So yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one. When we first started, Alex and I had very little experience in publishing before we started Nobrow. So we were starting from scratch. You know, when I say that, it's like, you know, we were learning as we went along. And I think that, but one of the things that we did initially was to do, more like small press projects, screen printed books, the magazine, and honestly, in the first instance, a lot of this was because these projects were quicker to generate, and the risk involved was not quite so huge. We didn't have any distribution at that point, so you know, even if we had, you know, published something and done a few thousand copies, the likelihood of being able to get it into the marketplace was quite kind of scant. So that was the experience that we had with our magazine, the first one that we did, which was as opposed to being screen printed, it was professionally printed, and instead of doing 50 or 100 copies, we did 3,000. But we didn't have any distribution, so we had to do it ourselves. So we sent our books, our magazines out to bookshops with a sale and return kind of invoice set up, and hoped we would get some money back. We had to chase after that. So it was hard. It made us understand the value of a distributor early on. So the next project was finding a distributor. And then once we had a distributor in place, the next project was having enough material, enough publications for them to think we were worthwhile publishers to distribute. So, that was that was our kind of early mission, I suppose. And once we had distribution, it opens things up a lot. You mentioned, distribution in France as well. That was something that we realized very early on was that the market for visual storytelling in France is so much bigger. It still is so much bigger than it is in the UK. So we decided that we would translate our books into French, with some positive results, but actually the difficulty of distribution across borders and across languages is actually immense. I mean, marketing, sales, all of these things need constant work, and it's not just about making the book and translating the book and getting it to that warehouse in that territory. It's then about communicating with that public and with your readers in that country, and doing that is huge. And I mean, we are now I think we're 19 staff at the moment, and having enough people to manage that process in the UK and the US is already a huge task for us. And so to do it in 2 languages, I think it was really, we tried, but I think it was impossible. And what we understood was that actually it's better to find partners in those countries that already have a connection with their readers and can manage that process, manage the marketing, manage the translation, and know what their readers want and are looking for. And to have relationships with so many publishers, particularly in France and the whole of Europe, and in fact wider, is really important to us now. So that was a positive to come out of that process, is to really have a lot of respect for what other publishers do for our authors and artists.
So 19% on your staff. Could you please tell us on the two in print, how many books, for example, you will publish in 2022?
So we also just started a third imprint, which is actually a more literary imprint. It's very small. It's called Imprint 27. And on that, we've just published our third book this year. And next year we'll have 4 books on Imprint 27. We always aim to publish maybe. Our aim is to publish 40 books a year, but it never happens. And at the moment, it's much more like 30. So if we're around 30 books a year, then we feel like we're okay.
And could you please tell us the balance between on the 30, how many?
Yeah. So No Brow, Flying Eye. If we do 10 books on No Brow, we'll do 20 books on Flying Eye, let's say.
And in translation? How is it for the balance between original projects and books already published in a language and you bought the rights?
Yeah, so I think we probably do more than I think less than 4% of new books are works in translation in the UK marketplace, which is very small considering that when you look in other parts of the world, it's more like 40 or even 50% of titles. So in the UK, it's really tiny, and I'd say that the pandemic, we stopped buying anything at that point just because it was we kind of we just wanted to pause and see where everything ended up. But we're publishing next year. We're publishing 2 or 3 titles in translation, and the year after, probably another 2 or 3. Now that's not including, those are just books that we're buying from foreign publishers. So sometimes when we are working in translation, we're also working with foreign artists and we're working with them on their books. And although the originating language will be English, we're still working with artists that are sometimes doing their working out in their own language. So for example, we might be working with a Spanish speaking artist, and they speak good English, but they're also kind of working through things in Spanish as well. So sometimes we need a little bit of extra support from a translator at that stage of the project. It's hard to do that when somebody has no English whatsoever. It doesn't mean, if it's the right book, it doesn't mean we won't do it, but it is obviously, it creates a lot more friction than we would like. So we always prefer if an author, an artist can speak English, because it's going to make marketing more easy as well. But it's not, we've done things where that hasn't been the case too. So it's we see it as a challenge though.
I think later on you will have some questions about this topic by participants. Before 2022 in your catalog for the 3 prints, around 30 books, but how many proposals, how many projects do you receive every year? It's hard to say, but just to...
It's impossible to say, because now the way that our acquisitions process works is we have really 3, 4, we have really like 4 commissioning editors really. So and by that I mean editors that are bringing through the door new projects. So for example, the ones that I will put forward to the rest of my team and pitch to them in our acquisitions meetings, I will receive quite a lot of projects that I never take beyond that point. I won't present them. I only present the things that I really like or want to do. And I guess of the things that I put forward, I imagine that maybe 1 in 3 gets through, and maybe 2 out of 3 don't get through. If I'm working on it a lot with someone, that makes it more likely that I'll get it through. But if it's just something that I've seen and say, oh, this is good, I like it, but that includes works in translation as well as works directly with authors. So, and that's replicated with my other commissioning editors. It's a similar thing for them. So I would suggest that if we're publishing 30, then we're probably looking at 100 Yeah.
What, how is it for you when you receive a proposal by an author? How is it? What is catchy for you? What you want to see at the beginning? You want to have a complete in a one PDF? You want to see to start with a cover? How that works? How you can pick up or to, let's say, to think that, okay, I really want to see more about this project. What will be the beginning? Really, the cover?
No, not really the cover, actually. I mean, an image of some kind that shows the style of image making. So I really need to see that. So something finished, something that looks like how you want it to look in the end. So I can imagine, I can imagine the book. The second thing that I really want to see, even if it's rough, I don't mind seeing rough pages if they're not finished. But what I want to see is the storytelling style. So I want to see how somebody dissects a story, how somebody makes it flow from one panel to the next. That's important to me, to understand this is somebody that has a unique voice, that has a storytelling style that I think is exciting, that I can sell, that people are gonna engage with. So that's two things visually, and well, one of those is not just visually; it's also the written element as well. And then finally, if that's the entire book, that's great. But if it's not, that's also not a problem. But if I don't have the entire book, then I want to know what the story is. So I want to see either a script or a script sample or a synopsis to show like what happens in the story. It doesn't have to be the entire book always. It can be quite a short synopsis. Quite often something short is actually better because I can quickly get an understanding of the project, and I know then if it's something that I'm interested in or not. And that all of these things in one PDF is amazing. If you send it to me, you know, it ends up on my, you know, my desk in a pile, which is, you know, probably just going to get lost. So I'm kind of, I like PDFs. I'm not a completely printed kind of guy. I like some digital stuff too.
When you said short, it's what you need at least. It's synopsis, some sequences, some pages even is not final, maybe pages in a storyboard stage, and what else?
And something that's like, this is what it looks like. This is the final quality of the illustration. This is how it will look and feel. So if I have those three things, then I'm reasonably happy. The other thing is that if at that point I like it, but I want some changes, I can say, look, I really like this, but have you thought of this or have you thought of that? And if you work with me then on a little bit, then I can take that and show it to people and find out, do we want to go further with this project?
Which could be frustrating for you if someone would send you the entire book, like,
and then you wouldn't be able to have any impact on it. So sometimes people do that. They send us the entire book and we say, look, we like this, but you need to make some changes. And that can be hard to hear. But then on the other hand, you know, if someone's willing to do that, then you see it. The book is a constantly evolving thing. And sometimes you think as an artist, it's finished, I'm done. But actually, we as a publisher want to make something the best it can be. So we might disagree with you on what the best it can be is. You might think this is the best. We might think this is not the best. We might say, we think you should change it or you should do more. And that can be a difficult conversation.
And you, as an editor, what you prefer? I know it depends, but do you like also to make, like in pattern, this commission? I mean, to have an idea. And could you please explain if you have an idea, I don't know, about a topic you really want to develop, but you are looking maybe sometime for authors? It could be the case.
Yeah, I mean, I think in some situations we may have a concept internally that we really want to make a book out of, or and therefore we will be thinking about artists to engage in that concept, but tend to be people that we're working with on other things, or that it's the next project that they do, or sometimes someone will send us something that's very similar and we just think, actually, this isn't right, but we really would love to work with you on this thing. So you never know. I mean, it's really worth, just contacting, even if you don't hear anything back. And let's face it, you probably won't hear back from most publishers that you send things to, but you never know. And you might just send something at the right time. You never know. So this is the thing. It's difficult to judge, but the more people that can see your work, the more chance you have that they will commission you. I mean, that's the laws of probability.
And in this case, for example, you have a script by a journalist, a novelist, and you are looking for an artist, and you want to find someone new. What artists they can send you as a portfolio? What you think would be good? Is 10 pages to show how is it for the art, or how you see it?
Yeah. I mean, I think most people now have either a website with their most recent work, or the work that they like the best, and I'm very happy to look at when people just send me a link. They just say, hi Sam, I don't know, I like your books a lot, here's a link to my work, get in touch if you like anything. Fine. And I usually, 9 times out of 10, I look and I see, and that's why I'm saying you never know, it might be the right moment that work is exactly the kind of thing that I'm looking for, in which case, great, Or you can send a PDF with, maybe 10 or 12 slides, and that's also good.
And do you think, I know it will be the movie with Bill Murray, because I asked you this question a few days ago, but I think, don't you think we can use the example of In Waves? Because I think it's a good mirror of what is the work between an editor and an author. Just to show that maybe at the beginning, an author, like the participants, they have an idea, but also thanks to feedbacks, it could be changed.
It could change. It can evolve. It's like a snowball. It can grow. So within Waves by AJ Dungo, he actually originally came with a college trip and did a studio visit to our office, and as part of that studio trip from Art Center Pasadena in California, they came to London, and he and his fellow students did presentations of their final projects that they were working on. And I would say that when AJ presented his project, it was about a surf pioneer, and his work was very visual. It was really beautiful, about a guy called Tom Blake, and I kind of knew immediately that I'd really like to do something with AJ, and maybe something to do with surfing. But the interesting thing with AJ was that the book took a very different course, because when I began a conversation with AJ later, after we had worked a little bit on a proposal for a book about surfing, and I began to talk to him about what his background was, what his interest in surfing was, how he'd got into surfing, that I discovered a story, his own personal story was an incredibly powerful one, and it was to do with his relationship with his girlfriend, who had, and I had no idea, but had died just a few months prior to me talking to him at that point, and of cancer, and there was just something there which then developed into AJ deciding that he wanted to make a book about his own experience and also about surfing. So it became a really amazing project, but it wasn't, it was a really hard, there were really difficult decisions to make about that. There were very hard choices. AJ, you know, at first, understandably, wasn't sure about whether he wanted to revisit that. It seemed really, he was still very much grieving. I didn't even necessarily feel comfortable telling him that I thought it was an amazing story, because it felt very kind of like cutthroat of me. But it's just the fact that when he was telling me, it was giving me goosebumps. It was making the hairs on my neck stand up, because it was so moving, it was so emotionally engaging, that I couldn't not say this is an amazing story. But I understand if you don't want to do it, but I'm just telling you, this is something that maybe is really important. And so it evolved from there. But obviously, you know, I would say that all books are a conversation, you know, between you know, an author and an editor. And the editor is very often invisible in the final version, and that's how it should be. But it leads many artists not to understand actually what an editor does, you know, and what an editor can do. And I think if you are interested in publishing and you feel like you're an auteur, don't underestimate what an editor can bring to your game. You know, you want an A game, but you may have an A- game without an editor. So don't underestimate what they can bring.
Sam, if you would have to sum up the job of an editor in 5 words, which words you will use?
Yeah, editors focus. They focus, and they direct, but not direct as in telling you what to do. They send you in a direction. And that's, I think, what a good editor does. And they're a sounding board. They're there to bounce things off. Some things, you know, that's more than 5 words, sorry. Editors are meant to be succinct and to the point. But yeah.
And how is it for you when some authors, they have problems? It could be different types of problems, issues on their project. How you
Everyone does. Wow. I mean, everyone does. I think the main thing is that you share your problems, because, you know, a problem shared is a problem solved. And if you just don't communicate you're having problems and you try and cover it up, it just means that the work isn't as good, or it's delayed. The worst thing for an editor is just not to know what's going on. You know, you just need to be upfront about what's happening, and hopefully, you know, sometimes the answer you can't find on your own, but sometimes when you share the problem, the answer, it can be found, you know. So that's the main thing I would suggest.
And before this, so I'm going back on the timeline of to create a project. So I have a question from Patricia about if there is a season. It's a good question, because of COVID, the seasons of for the presentation. What do you think? Because Frankfurt Book Fair, it was for me for online and different. I think you told me that you will be in an Angoulême festival, but nowadays is there still a season to bring a project?
It's a good question. I mean, honestly, if it's a good project, I think any time is the right time. You know, I don't think there's a bad time, but it depends on what your aims are. If you want something if you wanted something to come out within 12 months of sending it to a publisher, then I think it needs to be, you need to get it to them before one of those big book fairs in enough time that they can contract you. I mean, we managed to one of our best-selling children's books is called The Journey by Francesca Sana, and she sent that to us just before Frankfurt book fair one year, and we managed to contract it before we left, and then we took it to the book fair and we sold it into 9 languages. So that was a good moment. If she'd have sent it to us a week after, we would have had to wait until the next book fair, and it would only be another 6 months, but it's, you know, that makes maybe a difference to you. But the thing is, every publisher is working, you know, very far in advance, and it's not always possible for publishers to make very quick decisions. So, you know, I would suggest that you know, there isn't really the right time, but there's definitely, if you send it when they're at Frankfurt or when they're at Bologna, then you're not going to get any response because they're going to be busy. So the only time not to send it is right in the middle of October and right in the middle of April.
In question of time, when someone, an artist, will send you a proposal for a project, do you think for you they will have an answer, if it's a positive answer, in 2 weeks, 3 weeks? How you see it for the time? So just to try to have a timeline of, they will send a project to you, maybe you will have an answer. How long for you it takes for to bring on the editorial board and to vote if the project will be,
so I mean, I can only speak from myself,
of course.
because a lot of publishers do not accept submissions. You know, they will only work with agented projects. So that's the first thing. We're not like that. We do work with submissions and we do work with unagented people, sometimes to our detriment, but there you go, that's life. So but I would say that if someone sends me something and I see it, if I like it, I usually write back to them like within a few days. Because I like it, I'm like, I want to do this, like, let's do something. So I'm pretty quick. I would say probably the difficulty is just making sure that someone sees something. I don't have time to respond to everyone that I don't want to work with, because then I would, you know, I just would be only writing rejection emails to people. So I would suggest that if I see something that I like, I normally respond quite quickly. And then on top of that, we try in our company to have an acquisition meeting every month. It doesn't happen every month. It probably happens every 6 weeks. So we just try and do it like this rolling thing. So if I miss one of those, then it will go into the next one. So, you know, it might take a couple of months from sending something which is something that I'm saying, yes, I really like this, to actually having an offer. It could well take that long. And then the contract process depends on the individual, but it can be very quick, or it could take a long time if there's a lot of negotiations. So then there's that, and then once that's done, then we can start work. And then maybe, you know, how long does it take to write a book? I mean, it could be that it's already nearly finished. It could be that it's only just starting. So the longest books take 3 or 4 years. but sometimes it takes much less time, you know, maybe 6 months. So it really depends.
And when it's a creative process, how you prefer? You prefer to give some remarks from first from the script and then on the storyboard stage. How you think it's better, or it depends
Yeah, I
about the
mean,
authors?
it depends on how, because different people work in different ways. I think that having a script is a good starting place, but not everyone some people prefer to work visually. But either way, you know, to have something to look at, whether it's draft panels or whether it's a script, it gives the editor the chance to give feedback, you know, and feedback is not always you must change this to this. It's not ever that, really. Sometimes it is, but more often it's, here's a problem, what are we going to do about this problem? Maybe you could do this, maybe you could do that, and there are options that, and so then it's putting it back to the author to go away and think. Quite often I will say, look, here's a problem, what about this? And I send it back, and then the creator has time to think, comes back to me with something completely different, but it solves the problem and it's better than what I said, so that's great. But I don't mind as long as they're responding to the matter at hand. And there's no point, if an editor is telling you here's a problem, if you don't accept there's a problem, that's where there's a problem, because this is the collaborative process. You know, there needs to be a back and forth in this way. And when you have that back and forth, then you have a collaborative project, and you have, in my eyes, something that can be successful. But if it's constantly, I don't accept that that's a problem, you need to, you know, leave me alone, then it's not really a collaborative process.
It's again very interesting to see what is the job of an editor. So I think it's a key part. We have a question from the chat from Willem. I think, did you see the question? I can ask you, do you ever match a team of artists with writers? I think we spoke a little bit, but we can continue about it.
Yeah.
Is it worth illustrating getting in touch with a portfolio for consideration on future projects rather than approaching you with a project they want to pitch?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely worth it. Like I said before, you might just have a link to your website and that's it, and it just want to be considered. And that's, you know, sometimes that's as much as you can do, that's fine. Sometimes you'll send us a project and then, you know, it just happens that we don't end up doing that project, but we end up giving you something completely different. So there's no harm, you know, unless we see what you're doing, there's no harm in sending it. What I would suggest though is that, you know, you need to, not just of us, but you need to be aware of who the publisher is and what kind of work they do. So if you're sending them work which is wildly different to the kind of work that they do, then, you know, just bear in mind that it might not be the best work for, you know, you might not be that likely to work with that company. If a company only works with, you know, airbrush styled kind of imagery, then if you send them, you know, rough kind of pencil sort of work, then maybe they won't want to work with you. Maybe they will, I don't know. But I'm just saying, just be aware of who you're sending your work to, and try and tailor it to the people that you think you would be successful with.
Like, for example, when someone will send you a presentation of a project, it's a short, you prefer to have a short email at the beginning to say, okay, I just read in Waves, I have seen Hilda, I have seen this book from your line, and I think it could appeal to your catalog. You like?
Yeah, I think
like,
find some common ground with whoever you're writing to, because that's going to capture their attention. If you send the same email to 50 publishers and you haven't even bothered to find out the name of the person you're writing to, then they're not even going to look at your email. They're not even going to read it. We get sent so many things every day that just go straight in the bin. But if you're going to write to me personally, address it to me and say something about my company in the email, something very short, it can be a sentence, it doesn't have to be, but just something that says to me, oh yeah, this email is for me, not this email was sent to 100 people, you know. And equally, I don't mind getting one of those, just a newsletter like with your latest projects. That's fine, I actually have no problem. But if you're trying to get through and get something, a message to me, then just make sure it's to me. That's all. And I think that's because I'm a human being and I'm not a robot, you know, and you're a human being, I think, too, and not a robot. So let's talk like people. And then, you know, you could mention the weather or I don't know, the football scores. I'm joking. But what I mean is we're you know, treat people how you would want to be treated yourself.
Yeah, and I have to say to the participants, you are okay to receive a submission of projects without agencies. And again, it's not the case in all the companies, mostly in North America and also in UK. So I think it's very important. Do you have also why you are publishing artists? And I think it will be, I anticipate the question of the participant. It's really a window of the world because you have artists, authors from Colombia, Russia, Central America, different parts of the world. Why? It's a decision from your side, or it looks that you say in 2008 it was not the time of online social networks, and nowadays Nobo is like a name everywhere in the world for the comic scene. How you see it?
I mean, you know, it's to do with what, in the end, you know, we're publishing things that we think are interesting. So, you know, I think that's all we've ever done is just approach projects that we think are interesting, and they just happen. People have written to us from all over the world saying, hey, do you like this? And then we've turned around and said, yeah, we do, we love that, let's do that. So I mean, I think that in other publishing houses there may be pressures, commercial pressures to only work with authors within borders, you know, because it's easier, it's cheaper, it's more manageable. Clearly it's not as manageable when you don't, but that you can't, there is no we don't know where the next thing is coming from, you know. I mean, you know, when you look at Netflix now, and it's in all these different countries, and you see suddenly that the #1 show in the world is a show from South Korea. Yeah, and it's like that wouldn't have happened, you know, a few years ago, even probably, or at least TV companies wouldn't have thought it would. So it's interesting, and just because it's coming in a different language, or it's from a different culture originating, doesn't make it any less interesting. In some cases, it makes it more interesting.
And that's why it would be good to start again the convention in 2022, because I think the way also for you to discover, to find new talents, is to go to convention.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, and you know, and it's been the last nearly 2 years has been really, really difficult. The idea, you know, for us that we try and market books from, you know, people from all over the world, and yet no one can travel. But then on the other hand, I think that it's going to get more difficult for traveling anyway because of global warming and restrictions on flights and that kind of thing. But I don't believe that travel should be the restriction. I think, you know, you're going to see countries like our Brexit movement trying to close borders, but yet, you know, I think it's short-sighted. I don't think it's going to close off opportunities, honestly, because, you know, we're interested in what's going on. We're interested in stories as people, and stories don't just happen within borders.
And do you think because of territories, and sometimes territories, they could look and decide to say, okay, there is this language now. You think you are in UK, a part of your market is in North America, into English. Don't you think that maybe in the future, more and more books from your list, some books, will be also translated and published into Spanish at the same time? Or
yeah, possibly. I mean, I think that as particularly in North America, the Spanish speaking book market is getting bigger and bigger within the US, actually. So yeah, I'm interested in that for sure. I don't quite know how that will work, but I think it's an interesting potential, definitely.
You started to make books because of the object with Alex, because you were from design, came back and nowadays, how you see the digital age, the webtoons, we were talking about South Korea, how you feel it, how you feel about it? You think, okay, it has to be the same, or you have the nostalgia, or started to have the nostalgia of the object, or how you see it?
Yeah, I mean, listen, in the end, if an artist is making a living from doing web comics, then good for them, because it's hard to make a living from your work. So I applaud anyone who can find their audience in whatever way that is. I think that web comics, it is a different medium. You know, the way that you can present color and motion on screen is completely different to how you can do it in print format. But equally, you know, whatever you gain on screen, you lose something too. So there's no that, you know, it isn't either or. It's like it's both. And we've got web comics. I'm not disputing their right to exist. I think that in many cases they can help somebody to then have a really successful book as well. The interesting thing about all of the kind of social media kind of led stuff is how you find your audience. And the thing about books is that via bookshops, by independent and chain bookstores, you can find a slightly different audience to the one that you can find online only. So you know, in an ideal, you can have access to both, and both have their merits, you know. The great thing about, you know, downloadable books or print on demand or web comics is, you know, they don't have to be shipped internationally. There's arguably a smaller carbon footprint for those things. From a publisher's perspective, you know, if I'm just making one book for one customer, then that's perfect. I don't have to take the risk of printing 10,000 copies and only selling, you know, 5. So there's a lot of good things to come from that. But then on the other hand, you know, in order to consume these things on screen, we need lithium, we need cobalt, we need all of these minerals to make our machines work, and they all come from war zones and countries that are being destroyed for their natural resources. So you know, with books at least, we're not, you know, we can maintain standards in our forests, and they can be farmed like any other food production, and there can be ethics involved in that production, and that's the paper that we use. So, you know, there's a level of consideration that goes into the publishing trade as well. So it's, I don't know how you work with this stuff. That's why I say, in the end, if it's about an artist making a living, then as long as they're doing it in a responsible way, I think it's good.
Oh, it's interesting to see how it is for regarding the question of global warming. It's and the question, the issue with the paper recently, and so on. So it's getting very hard. Sam, you gave us an overview of how to present a project. How is it during the creative process, and for you, from the authors, what you need, what you wait for the promotion? Do you think they have authors? How you see it? They have to be involved. It's good when they have contacts, when they have followers, or like in the States when they go on stage to present their project. What you?
I mean,
ask,
listen,
it's
everyone is different, and some people are very comfortable, you know, in the limelight, and other people are not at all. I mean, you know, honestly, I think that if you have the capabilities to sit and captivate an audience, then I think that's amazing and it's good. And I think that a publisher can market that very, very easily, very well. And I think it's a string to your bow, you know, if you can do that, I think it's very useful. But not everyone can. So it's up to the publisher and the artist to figure out the best way forward for them. And there might be other, if you can't, you know, lecture a room of people, maybe you can do Instagram stories, or you can make a video to put on TikTok, or I don't know, maybe you can do something different. If you're not comfortable doing, you know, book tour experiences, signings, all of that kind of thing, it's a shame, because it helps to promote your book. So in the end, it's not just the making of the book. You know, I think a lot of people think that it starts and ends there for them, but it's not the case. You know, we're selling you every day. So if you can do things as well to help in that process, it's good, whether it means having an author page on Amazon and uploading content to that yourself, so that you know, people can see who you are, or maybe it's keeping your own social media up to date. I hate social media. I don't like it at all. Personally, I don't want to be anywhere near it. I don't want to look at it. But lots of people do, and they might be supporters of you. They might like and be interested in you and your book. So unfortunately, if it's the world you want to be in, then I think you have to engage with that. And I think just because you don't have hundreds of thousands of followers, that doesn't, if you have a good story, if you have a good book, then people will be interested. But you can't just sit back and let other people sell it for you. You've got to be at the forefront of that as well. And the most successful authors you will see, they do that. They're out there selling it themselves in some shape or form. So yeah, it's worth bearing in mind.
I have another question, because thanks to now it could be a graphic novel, a comics, a memoir about all the topics. If you would have the choice with which artist you would like, if we may know, you would like to work with, maybe not a comics artist, but maybe a movie directors, a novelist, and maybe it's secret, so an idea you had, if we may know, And the second question, I already asked you it, but which book you would have been glad to be the editor? So it's two questions. If you don't feel comfortable to answer to the first one, but just to, there is so many possibilities nowadays to do a graphic novel with like John Lewis with March in the States or other people. And don't you think it's easier to build a comics project nowadays than before, or I don't know?
I would definitely do a graphic novel with William Shatner about being in Star Trek and then going up into space, and I'd have Jeff Bezos as the editor on that book as well. I want like an element of like like how Amazon could boost the algorithm for that title anyway, something stupid. That would be fun.
What about I think I know it's risky because nowadays it's hard with the lawyers with comics, because we have to say maybe in the past it was easier. Nowadays every documentary, I mean on the French market, everything is double check for sensitive topics.
Yeah.
But it means maybe a graphic documentary about the beginning of Amazon. It seems hard.
Yeah.
And maybe it's new for the work of editors and authors. Like recently on the French market, yes, some books had some issues. They have been sued because of topics, or sensitive topics. So
yeah, it's difficult, but again, that's the job of a publisher to decide what's going too far, what's not going far enough, what things are sensitive and need consideration, what things are not sensitive and do not need consideration. And it's hard, and there's a lot of people out there that we can offend, and sometimes do, and that's the world that we live in, so we just have to navigate it.
A last question, and then I will give the voice to the participant. How is it in UK? You say that for the landscapes, it was different at the beginning, and you have festivals. There is like the twin of Angoulême festival every year in UK. How is it in bookstores? More and more graphic novels on the table, or mostly your catalog, Ozzy Simons, Alan Moore, or is it cliché? But how is it? The last time I went to London, I was 14 years old, so it was
Really? You haven't been here for that long?
No, it was during the semi-final between Arsenal and Paris Saint-Germain, and every time we lost, but that's another story.
I mean, it's hard. It's tough to get graphic novels in UK bookshops. Honestly, it's really difficult. So
why? Because of the booksellers, they think it's still.
They think it's a niche. They think it's a niche. Yeah, it doesn't mean that they're. I think it's we find it easier for children's comics to get into more bookstores, but adult graphic novels is hard work. Yeah, so if you're working on something for children, I think you have a bigger opportunity, a wider audience in the English-speaking market, because they're actually understanding the value of graphic novels now, whereas maybe 10 years ago they were not. So now they're really seen as a way of engaging all children in literacy and not just the super, you know, literate and the kids that are interested in reading. There's a lot of kids that are not interested in reading. There are a lot of kids that are turned off, switched off by a book with thin rows of text, you know, but that doesn't mean they're going to be switched off by a comic book or a graphic novel. And then they learn to read. Suddenly that novel with the thin lines isn't so intimidating anymore, you know. And that's something that we find in the UK. We're becoming more kind of welcomed into that space for young people. But for the more, you know, mature reader, it's still seen as very niche. And yeah, there are bookshops that will do very well in that niche, but not every bookstore will take every graphic novel.
Like Gosh, for example.
Gosh is an incredible shop. Yeah, I mean, that's a destination store, and there are others like Gosh in the rest of the UK. Page 45, Traveling Man, you know, Forbidden Planet, Dave's Comics, Nash. There's lots of specialist bookshops that are really passionate about comics and graphic novels, that find their market really well. But the thing is that if you want to have a best-selling book in the UK, you need to have it in every bookstore, not just in the specialist shops.
Yeah. And for you, like I don't know, David Seller, Scholastic for graphics, young adult, it's really a target. It's really very important because, for example, a young adult on the French market, I have to say it doesn't really exist. It's really shonen or shoujo from Japan, but like Raina Stagelmeyer, she's not.
I would say the important market is the middle grade. It's the kind of, you know, even younger, from 6 to 12 is like the place where, you know, for us, we have Hilda, we have Akisi, which is from the French. We have a bunch of other projects in that area. Joe Todd Stanton, we have Sierra Miller, we have Isabella Rojas, we have you know, we're doing more and more around that age group because the schools and the libraries are much more receptive. I agree with you. Young YA, as it's called, young adult fiction, is notoriously fickle and difficult. So actually, it's almost like just adult or kids, and young adults will pick and choose between the two.
No, it's very interesting. Plus, to see how important are the librarians and school market in UK and in North America. Like,
they're incredibly important because they're influencers, really, and they have control of the ordering habits for their schools and libraries. So, you know, a good, well-loved series, you know, one library may reorder that book, you know, 2 or 3 times throughout the year because it gets like worn out, you know, and they need a new copy. So if you multiply that across all of the libraries in the US as well, libraries have a huge part to play, probably more so than in the UK, where they seem to be closing all the time. But in America, libraries are incredibly important kind of community resources that are well funded for considering other aspects of American, you know, infrastructure is not well supported like it might be in Europe, but actually libraries compared to in the UK are very well supported. And then if you talk about the school library system as well, I mean, that's very, you know, like with us, a title which is championed by teachers is going to be successful. That's it. So
in the time, plus like a long seller, because it seems that teachers, they will order again and again every year.
The series for us, like or like William Grill's Shackleton Journey, Joe Todd Stanton with his Professor Brownstone series, Hilda by Luke Pearson. All of these books have been really really championed by teachers and liked by the kids that are reading them. So therefore, it backlists, it sells again and again and again and again and again, and it becomes ever closer to the holy grail of publishing, which is to be a household name, is that it's something that everybody knows. And that's what you want, because then you're fixed on that shelf always.
I think participants from my side, I'm finished all my questions, so it's your turn, if I may say. If you want to ask any question to Sam, let us know. It could be on the chat, so otherwise you can ask directly a question to Sam. We have time. We still have, I think, 10 minutes or so. So otherwise, if there is no questions, and I would be surprised that there is no questions, I have a last question because I kept it in case. But I'm waiting.
If there's no questions, then hopefully it's because I haven't bored you all to death or sleep. But
I don't think. So, questions.
It means that we've covered everything, Nicolas, which is down to you.
It's before the discussion with you. I had a long talk, like a Castro speech during less than 2 hours. So. And I think you cover a lot during the discussion, so it made me think that maybe that's why there is no questions. Isa, a question, Laure, a question. Well, before to receive a question, I have maybe a last question. So, okay, I go back. I know you already cover this almost everything about this topic, but the participants, again, it's people, artists, authors from different countries, and maybe the language barrier could be, but could you, again, what is important for you is to have, of course, the presentation into English.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that having, a kind of working level of English it doesn't have to be, it might be that you can deal with emails and stuff, but in person you find it a bit tricky. I think we can cope with that. I think that's all right. But I think if you have no English and we have to do everything through a translator, then that can just really kill a project. But if you've got enough English that you can cope with emails, and then I think we have a starting point. In a couple of cases, I encouraged people to go and get some English lessons, and then we ended up doing a book with them, and it's kind of been okay since that point. But I think that I'm not doing you a favor if you're not speaking English, because in the end, if we need you for sales and marketing, for interviews, for kind of sort of talks or social media kind of stuff, I feel like if you don't have any English, it's only going to harm your opportunities, really. And yeah, but likewise, I mean, sometimes we work with books in translation where maybe someone doesn't have that much, but there's enough we have enough of a you know, of the story that works in English that people seem happy to accept that, but it's still really hard. Like I said, for less than 4% of, I think that was the stat that I last heard, works of publishing in the UK are works in translation. I mean, it's shocking, to be honest. You know, that it's so little. And there are, you know, certain publishers like Pushkin Press that almost entirely specialize in works in translation, which is seen as a niche. I mean, it's nuts that that's the case, but it is, unfortunately. Maybe if it wasn't the case, we wouldn't have voted to leave Europe, but there you go.
You know, it seems the chat is blocked.
Ah.
I have to say.
Ah, it's back.
Really?
No, well, there is. Maybe a question about the agents in the UK. Do all British authors have an agent? Sam, do you often work with agents? I hate agents, right, Nicola? I hate all agents.
Collapse. Plus, it's a question from Laure. I know Laure, and we can talk after.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a good question.
Good question.
I mean, I think we do work with agents sometimes. Yeah, I think good agents are good, and you know, I think that they're very helpful. I don't think you have to have an agent in order to get work, but I think in the UK, a lot of publishing companies will only work with agency projects. So that's the way that it is. We're not like that. We're quite open, but it does mean that, you know, if you get a contract from us, maybe it looks a bit scary, but it's not that different from any other publishing contract. But in the end, we want something that's as fair as possible. But the thing about agents is they understand what the contracts are. They see them from all of the different publishers. So they can see when something is out of step or a little bit out of line. So they can help you a lot more with that. In some instances, they can help you to shape a project to get it ready to send to a publisher and advise you. So that can be helpful too. I mean, it's a bit of a, you know, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? And if you don't have an agent, can you get a publishing contract? And you know, the answer in the end is, if you've got a good project, if you've got a good story, if you've got something interesting, then it will find a way through. And you just have to get it in front of as many people as possible, and have a relatively thick skin about, you know, criticism and rejection, because unfortunately, if you know, you're going to get a lot of that in this, any of the creative industries. Unfortunately, it's the way that it is.
Now, if I may say, I totally agree, and I don't think, because I have seen so many literary agents in North America, and all the authors, they need to have an agent. It's kind of, they are kind of obliged. But again, it could be with or without. So it depends about what you need. If you need a first editor, as you said, Sam, maybe someone to help you for the presentation, to make to be a filter of your project. Mm-hmm. Maybe someone to give you some contacts. It's really case by case. So it's not black and white. It's sometimes it could be good, could be not interesting. It really depends.
So if you want to email me, it's sam@nobrow.net. It's quite easy to remember. If you want to send Nicolas some projects as well, he always sends me the good ones too. So I don't mind. And then you get an agent thrown in. So but yeah.
Other questions? Laure, maybe? No, I think what is important, I think I'm still on my mind a scout. I mean, my job is just to send the right project to the right person. So if I may say to the participant, is what Sam told you before, you need to know to see what are the lines of the publishing company you want to send your project. It's better like this, and then it could be with or without an agent. It's just to send to the right person.
So there's a question about working with authors, even if you haven't met them in person.
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, look, the way that we're able to communicate now with Zoom, I mean, there are actually probably some authors that we work with in the UK that we haven't met, just because, you know, they haven't come to London. Or, I mean, I think the way to explore it is that if you do meet someone, it's always nice to meet someone in person, but I don't think it means that you can't work together. And because anyway, most of what we do now is working via email and over Zoom. There's more than enough opportunity to get really good things done. You know, someone that I'm working with, well, with AJ, for example, Dungo, you know, I met him to begin with, but then the entire book was done, you know, back and forth over, you know, the Pacific Ocean and Atlantic. I mean, he was in LA, and then we met him again after the book had been published, so that was nice. I'm working with Edo Brenes, who's based in Costa Rica, and I've met him because he used to live in England, but he doesn't anymore, and I haven't seen him since we started, you know, working on the books that we've just done. And that list goes on, honestly. So I think if it's the right project, it shouldn't really matter where you live.
Some other questions? So we still have a few minutes. No, it seems we cover everything. Well, if there is no questions anymore, Sam, I would like again to thank you to have participated to this discussion. I do think it was helpful to the participants. I guess you will receive a bunch of book proposals.
So that would be nice.
So yeah, in a good way. Plus, it's also a participant of a webinar from Invisible Line, so European project between different countries, Italy, Czech Republic, Germany, and in France. And I have to say, because Lisa, you asked me, so it will be an exhibition in Bilbao. What is a magazine for promotion?
Yeah, this is Drawing Invisible Lines. This is
okay, you got it. So
yeah, it's very good.
Oh,
thank you.
Thank you.
Sam, Lisa, see you soon.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.